Hello and welcome, and thanks for taking a few minutes to learn about effective transport. In this brief demo, I'm going to take and walk you through the key features of transport to effectively manage your ITSM Foundation data. There are other short demos that focus on the other capabilities, but that's going to be the focus of this demo. Let's get started. Now, when you think about your foundation data, what are the greatest pain points that you're actually experiencing today? Is it around specifically your product and operational catalog? Let's say you're going through an update and you have to manually make those changes, or you're adding new ones on a continual basis as your service catalog grows and other aspects of ITSM. Maybe it's your assignment and approval rules, which can be manual and intensive in making those changes. Or in the last example would be around ITSM template data. As your IT support staff starts to use Remedy ITSM more, they want to leverage the best practice capabilities of templates. You have additional templates you need to add, and that can be very time consuming. It's all a manual process. What I want to focus on and show you is Effective Transport is a Remedy-based application that is fully integrated with the Remedy ITSM suite to quickly allow you to onboard, load, and update ITSM data. Now, it's all of the applications that you see listed in front of you, the data types. We're focused on ITSM Foundation data, but it also handles your people support staff data as well as SRM, Asset CMDB, as well as SLM. We'll also talk about how transport is really valuable in migrating this data across your environments. Now, one of the key concepts that is important to understand is that everything that we do within transport is done within the context of a project. At a bare minimum, it allows us to segment our data and better manage that data. So if I have multiple people on my team that are managing ITSM and they're involved with loading some of the data, I could be focused on ITSM data refresh while someone else is working on an SRM catalog build. What we're doing here is providing a best practices framework that allows you to choose what you want to actually leverage and track. At a minimum, the data directory, but you can also track activities as well as the auditing that goes on for each data load. Transport also simplifies the data collection. Many customers love this feature because that means their business analyst or their non-technical teams can collect the data for them. So this has been used in upgrades where I'm going to come out of another environment, older system, export out the data, put it in the simple spreadsheet and load that data. Or I'm allowing my change management team to collect the template data and they give me the file and I quickly load that. This is a much simpler approach when we compare this to the BMC UDM workbooks that are very complex with their multi-tabbed approach. Loading data into transport is very iterative. Let's say you have a file you're going to load that has 100 entries. I load that file. I'm not going to even look at the file to go through and review it. I'm going to review it inside of transport because it has its own built-in data validation. It allows you to accelerate the onboarding and loading of data, as well as streamline your overall data management process as you update and make maintenance changes. Finally, data migration. We simplify data migration because transport's installed on all of your environments. You simply point that environment towards the files and load them. So that means in the development environment, it could be a very iterative process where I have 4 or 5 data types I'm going to load as a part of release of data. I'm going to make sure that all those files load correctly. But with the other environments, I will simply create a transport job, schedule that, and allow it to bulk load all of that data in. I can check the results of it the next day I come into work, or I can simply click the run button and come back later and make sure that everything's loaded successfully. Now that's the high level big picture. Let's actually look at a couple of these key features in action. As I said, Transport is installed as a Remedy-based application, having all of its own workflow, staging forms, but it also has its own permissions model. That means that only those with permissions can access and interact with transport. So your data admin have their own area that they can log into, come in and work as far as loading and managing the data. Let's start with projects first. Projects give you a big picture of what you're loading for a customer. So if you're multi-tenant, you can have each customer, or if you're single tenant, you would just have your one customer here and you have your various projects. You can see I have quite a few different things in flight right now. We're going to focus on ITSM Foundation. So let's go ahead and take a look at that project. And this is completely up to you what you want to leverage with transport. You have the ability to define what activities you want to track if it's a major project such as an upgrade or a release of, different parts of your SLM and SRM catalog. So you can use this feature or you can completely ignore it and use just the journal entries, which audits every data load that occurs. And at a minimum, we have to set up a projects folder where our files will be. That means if I have 3 people involved in different data load projects, we all have our different directories, our different project folders, and we won't conflict with one another, but we can be on the environment at the same time loading data. And you'll see here that we provide what the server is, how to get to the server, how to connect with our account, where the files are actually located. Once a project is created, you're ready to start loading the data. As a data admin, I have the onboarding console that I will use on a regular basis for loading and updating data. Now, first of all, when I first come in, I'm going to pick project in this case because we're going to be loading data for ITSM phase 1. And it gives me a summary if I was tracking in activities, which ones I'm responsible for, and what was last loaded, what was successfully loaded. So if I have multiple people involved in this, I can always kind of keep track of what they've been working on. Let's go over and actually load some ITSM Foundation data. Now you'll notice here as you look through this list of data types, it covers every possible data type that you would want to load into your ITSM environment. For example, the very simplest of data, such as organization. One single CSV file, easy to collect, very fast to load into the environment. Whereas also we can take on the more complex data, such as, let's say, approval mappings. And I have some brand new change approval mappings I need to add into my environment. I can go ahead and select the data link. It knows where everything's at because of the project. It knows the name of the file based on the data type I've selected. It also will go automatically set a date timestamp for the log file. And I'm going to choose import and transport. When I choose import and transport, what is happening is we're actually taking the file via the filter plugin, bringing into the staging form. The staging form is a point where we bring the data in for validation before it moves in to Remedy ITSM. So we see here, this is the record that came from the CSV file with all the appropriate fields, and it is processed. Now, if there was an error, it would actually mark it as error, and it would place the error message in this field. That makes it very easy for data admins to troubleshoot issues and resolve them very quickly. Let's go look at the results of this in the actual target form. As you can see, a data admin has everything they need right at their fingertips, whether it's going to the stage data, the application data, to open up the data file from the server, to look at the mapping file, which is used in the mapping of the CSV file columns into the target fields on the staging form, and finally the log file. Let's go look at the app data. Now I loaded change approval rules. Let's see what we have here. And you'll see these are the ones we just loaded. Whereas without this, I have to manually go through and click through and create all of these approval rules. And then you have to migrate it across your environments. Once I'm satisfied with the results, let's say I've reviewed it, maybe I've tested these rules on my development environment, I'm now ready to migrate them. It's just simply go ahead and place them on that server with a transport job, and you can bulk load it with any other data that you would be loading. We'll cover transport jobs in just a few minutes. Now, what about data updates? Let's go over to product catalog. And I'm going to use an example that I've actually found when I was on site with a customer, where they had a very large product catalog that they've had for some time deployed in their ITSM environment, and they now want to refresh it, retiring old entries, adding new ones. It's a very manual process, and they found a way to kind of export the data and make some changes, but they could never easily import it back in. With transport, we can simply load the original ones. So we'll load some Lenovo and Dell, as well as some different laptops, some Pavilion HP laptops. So these entries are now in there. So as I said, let's fast forward 6 months. Let's even go out a year from now. And we've been using these for a while, but these models have now been retired. They no longer should be available in our catalog. That means that I have to go through each one of these, view it, take it offline, or I can delete it here. And depending on, so you can set offline or delete based on your best practices and your rules for governing this data. With transport, all we have to simply do is take the file, change the status, and reload the file for those entries. So we come back over here, we clear out our data. We've placed an updated file on our server. So in this case, we have the operational category update 1 placed there with the entries that we want to update and a change in the status. In my example, I'm actually going to delete them because they're no longer used and I want to retire them completely from the catalog. So we come in here, we've picked the data link, we choose update 1, import and transport. It has now processed all of the Lenovo ThinkPads that have been removed because we're retiring them and we're moving to Macintosh. We look at the results over here. You'll notice 19 entries. We are now down to 12 entries. They have been removed from our catalog. VMC updated the workflow in a lot of the back-end forms that if we set something to delete, it will now be removed from the entry. We could have set these as offline as well, so that's still a possibility. If just setting the status in the field, if I want to take one of these to offline, I simply set the status to offline. And that is on the staging form. It is this entry right here. Now, in our case, as I said, we've deleted them, but in the other case, you can actually set the status to offline. And you would leave this alone. You would say add modify. So both are possible. All of the staging forms have the statuses that correspond to the data type that you're loading. This makes it very easy to maintain this data and manage it. I know many data admins now, they use transport as their primary mechanism for managing and updating the data. So let's go to our final use case of ITSM Foundation data. Let's take a look at change templates. And this actually comes from a customer example where they wanted their change implementers or change managers to have the ability to quickly and easily create change templates. The ITSM admin took the transport data collection file. They've hidden columns that they don't want their administrators worrying about. And they simply have created a very simple, easy to work with spreadsheet where these change implementer and the change management team can create the change templates that they need added to the library, as well as updating existing ones. So both are possible. So they gave them the spreadsheet, they went off and collected the data. We'll just load these 50 examples here. I've saved it, placed it on the server. We're now ready to load the data. So we come in, we choose change template. We clear out the previous data load. We add the name of the file that I've placed on. These are for server administration. So we'll go ahead and change the name of the file. We'll import and transport. As you can see, we quickly loaded the 67 entries from the spreadsheet. Now let's go look at the actual data. Here are the templates that we loaded from the spreadsheet that now my change implementers can go in and test, maybe in the QA dev environment, and then I'm ready to bulk load this data into production. For the customer that's using this approach and process, it's streamlined their ability to better manage and actually better leverage the capabilities of Remedy ITSM. Two more features before we finish. One is a new feature that was added in the latest release of transport that's used with ITSM version 8, and that is the export capability. We now have the ability to export all foundation data into a transport format and then take that file, make modifications to it, or migrate it. Where this was added and is very helpful for customers is that let's say you load some data into QA, UAT test environment. Someone manually makes changes to that data. So let's say they made some changes to your product categories, your operational categories, and assignment rules. You want a copy of these to move to production. I can simply go ahead and pick the appropriate project where the files will be placed. It places an acronym on the front of it. Let's say I want to put it with today's date. Generate files. It successfully exported those files. And we could go to the server to actually look at and retrieve those files and now make change to them or migrate them to production. This feature is really helpful for that, and it is all of the foundation data, including even people and people permissions. Final feature I want to talk about, and that is transport jobs. Before we do that, I want to actually show you the data doesn't exist on the server, and then we'll run a transport job. So back under company, let's go look and show you what exists on this server. Now let's say for a minute, instead of this being a development environment, this is actually production. I have a new tenant I'm going to add into my environment called Titan Systems. They're a new company that was brought into an acquisition. I now have to onboard all of their Remedy ITSM data. And so instead of going through the iterative process I've been showing you in this demo of just load data, validate it, test it, I want to bulk load all of that data at once. And that's what we're going to do in this example. We're going to bulk load the company, organization, location, support group, people, and their people support permissions. Now, the people support permissions is covered in another demo that's on this page here that you can watch at a later time. I'm focused just on the ITSM Foundation in this example, but this applies to any data type we want to bulk import and migrate across environments. Let's go run the job. So Transport Jobs has its own console, can be accessed from the onboarding console. Transport job is a grouping together of different data types that I want to run in a certain sequence. I have the ability to create multiple jobs. I can even copy existing ones and rename them. Best practice is to have multiple data migration jobs created that can be reusable by different members of your team. You can either run or you can set a schedule for it. So in this example here, we're going to load company, location, organization, support group, people, and people permissions. Let's go ahead and run the job. So we can see the job is running, and if I refresh this, we'll see it now is now completed. Let's go look at the results here before we actually review the data in the company form. So when I drill into this, I will actually see that each data link has a completed success. Now, if there was an error, it would tell me if there was an error and which records failed to load or what was the total count. I can even access the log file to look at the results of this. Let's go look at the actual results in the company form. So if I look for Titan Systems, it now exists. And if I search for them, we'll see that it created the company, the location data, organization data, support group, the people records, which all of the people in this company that were brought in were support staff. So if I were to drill into one of them, such as Dwight Burris, we would see that it loaded this user's permissions, support groups, and function roles. In summary, as a data admin, transport saves me significant time from collecting data, loading it, fixing errors, and then easily migrating it between the environments. Now, while I've focused on foundation data in this module, transport overall provides significant value for all of the modules of ITSM. Bottom line, it reduces your onboarding time and effort and ultimately the cost. It allows you to load data, multiple onboardings at the same time without conflicting one another. As the example I've shared for change management, it simplifies the data collection so the experts, the business analysts that work with that data can easily get that data, give it to the data admin, and load it. And it streamlines the deployment of complex data. On this page here, you'll find other demos of SRM and Asset Seem2be as well as SLM. Take a look at those and how we actually save time with loading that type of complex data. And then finally, it lowers your ongoing maintenance costs. Many customers are using transport today, and they find it is the easiest way to actually load this data and manage it. Thanks for taking time to watch this demo of effective transport. If you liked what you saw here, you'd like to see more of it, maybe a more in-depth demo, contact us via our website, and our technical team would be glad to set up a live demo of transport. Thank you.